Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Maureen O'Connor from Quilter's Heaven in Northbrook, Illinois, and I am the Opinionated Quilter. Today's episode, number 36, is Quilter's Choices. How do we choose to spend our time, money, and talents, and who we want to spend them on? But before we get to that, I want to make a quick clarification. I had a customer who watches my videos come in the shop and say she sees me at the whiteboard doing all the math and it makes her head hurt. I want to make it abundantly clear. I am not here to make your head hurt. I am here to make your head not hurt, that you can do the math. We have so many people who are math adverse. Don't be one of them. It will help you with your quilting. It will help you resize things, make your project to be exactly what you want it to be. Remember, do all your math without the seam allowance and add the seam allowance back in. It's not hard. You can make it easy. Now, let's get to today's episode. We've talked many times about the choices quilters make, from your fabric choices to your block size choices, to the tools and rulers you like to use, cutting systems, all the way down to your seam rippers and snippers. Today I want to talk about how you choose to spend your time, money, and talents. And I'm not going to delineate between the three because many times the choices overlap and intertwine. I'm going to start with an example that's made up, but you may have experienced something similar in your life. You are in a book club. You've been in it for over 20 years. Every single time someone has a first grandbaby born, you make a quilt for that child. Now, the person in the club who you like the least is having their first grandchild. You have to make the quilt. What are you going to do? You don't want to spend a whole lot of time because you'd rather spend time on other people's projects. You don't want to spend a whole lot of money because it's not somebody you really care about that much, but you have to make the quilt. So, things you can do. On a regular basis, pick up first quality quilt shop fabric when it's reduced. Have it in your stash. It will be good for backings, and it can also be, depending on what you've purchased, used in the front of the quilt. Don't go out and buy new pre-cuts. They are sold at a very premium price. Don't buy something brand new at top price. You might have something in your stash that works. Remember, the more piecing you do, the more time, the more fabric, the more batting. The simpler you keep it, the less expensive and less time. Real example, when I was still married, my now ex-husband had a coworker who was having, and his wife were having their first baby, and he asked me to make a quilt for them. If you take just a themed fabric juvenile, cut a piece from it, maybe sew a border on it or not if you don't want to. Perfect time to use the right sides together, leave an opening for turning, sew all the way around, turn right side out, sew one more time around, closes the opening, and then you can just quilt diagonally or straight. You can do lines 6 to 8 inches apart. You could get this done in less than 2 hours, totally finished, ready to give. Now that's an example of saving time and money. Let's move on to another example of where you may make different choices. Let's start with you hate making t-shirt quilts. You just really can't stand it. And one of your neighbors comes to you and says, would you make a t-shirt quilt for them? And you don't want to, so you're most likely going to say no. And they say, I'll pay you for it. And that really doesn't sway you. But then your almost 16-year-old delightful granddaughter that you absolutely adore says, Grammy, would you make me a t-shirt quilt for my 16th birthday? Do you treat these two people the same? Do you say no to your granddaughter like you said no to your neighbor? Not in my world. In my world, I have a delightful 16-year-old granddaughter. I'm going to make a t-shirt quilt for her, and I'm going to do it with joy because I love her. So we make different choices for people whom we love versus people who we are not so in love with. Now, this example is one where it's a flat out no to an absolute yes. You can also take quilt patterns and still make the quilt or the project, as in we're going to move on to Christmas tree skirts again. You can still make the project, you just alter it to alleviate the things you don't want to do. I've got two behind me to show you. This first one is a panel that my staff member just quilted and put a border on and added prairie points. Well, it looks great. The color choices of the fabric she chose for the prairie points is perfect. But I'm not going to do prairie points. I don't enjoy them, I don't like them, and I'm not going to do them. So while I might quilt the panel and give it as a gift, mine won't have prairie points on it. This next one is scalloped edges. It's much more difficult than one would think to get these to be even. There are tools that they make to help you do it, but it's still time and effort and difficulty. And to get these around the curve, get the binding around the curves nicely, it's time, it's effort. And I don't think it changes the look of the pattern enough to make it worthwhile for me to do it. I will make this quilt. I enjoy this kind of sewing, but mine's not ever going to have scalloped edges on the bottom. Here's an example of where a simple fabric choice change can make a big difference in the fussiness of making your project. Back to Krista Moser's Gilded Christmas Tree Skirt. On the first one I did use the striped fabric for the stars. Now she does use a striped fabric also for the setting background triangles. I did not in mine. I didn't think it was worth it for that. You didn't really much see the stripes, but I did use the stripes for these star points. And you can see how the stripe comes off the bolt. It's this way. So if you cut full width of fabric, your striped fabric would be a stripe this way, vertically. To make the star point spin, you need your stripe to be horizontal. So you have to cut it hunks of your fabric and then cut it horizontally across. And that makes the project more time consuming and just more fussy. And if you want that effect and you've got the time and you want to do it, by all means make that choice. I did on my first one and I really liked the result. But on my second one I said, I don't want to use stripes. I'm going to use just a regular fabric, and I picked this pretty starlit fabric from Blank Quilting, and I was able to do it with just a couple strips of fabric. I don't remember if it was 2 or 3, but I was able to get all 36 diamonds out, just full 40 inches of fabric, 42, and just got them made real quick. So that's an example of just a simple fabric choice. Now we're going to move on to one more. First, I'd like to start off with, I love Amanda Murphy. I love her quilting rulers. I love her fabric. While I've never met her, I think she seems like such a lovely person. And I am not criticizing her. I am saying I would make modification to her pattern. So I saw this Christmas Magic tree skirt and I thought it looked so interesting. And since I haven't made enough Christmas tree skirts this season, I said I have to make one more. And I got her pattern, and when I first opened it up, what did I see? Paper templates. I said, not going to do it. They went out with the Stone Age. So I said, how would I make it? So I look at the 2 paper templates, and the first thing I see is it's a kite shape. It's a 45-degree angle and a 90-degree angle. So it's a kite shape. And I said, do I have a kite shape ruler already? I went to that big box of rulers that you've seen before. Not a single kite shape ruler in there. I was shocked. So I went to my ruler rack in the shop, and what did I find? 3 kite rulers. So I said, will any of these work for it? Well, this first one's kind of small. Second isn't as small, but still too small. And then I take this one, and it's almost perfect. A 1/2 inch smaller is absolutely perfect. So when I make this tree skirt, I most likely will use this ruler. However, it is a 2.5 inch strip pattern, and you all know I like things smaller than bigger. So I might choose to use 2-inch strips instead of 2.5, in which case I might go down to one of the smaller kite rulers. I'll make that decision when I'm ready to make the tree skirt. The second thing in this pattern is this triangle. And this is just a regular old triangle. And here I found a ruler. This is a Creative Grids ruler, and it fits it perfect. But what else is wrong with this triangle? I'm going to move this up to the camera so that you can see. These triangles stop. They don't go all the way to the edge of the diamond shape. They go so when you're binding, you have an inner turn here, outer, inner, outer, and it keeps going like that. The triangles don't go to the end of the point. Maybe you can see it better on the back version where you can see the whole thing. So if you count those turns on the binding, there's 33 binding turns. How do you get to 33? Well, it's an 8-pointed Christmas tree skirt, and then you've got extra turns, and then you've got where there would just be 1 turn because it's a Christmas tree skirt and it's opened up, you have 2 turns. So it's 33. Now, we talked about who you would do certain things for. I guarantee you, there is not a person on the planet that I would do that for. Binding's my least favorite thing to do in the first place. 8 turns of the binding is plenty. I'm not doing 33. How do you solve it? Very easy. Make bigger triangles here so that they reach the end of the points of the kite end of the template or piece. I don't know what to call it. I keep wanting to say star, but it's not a star. But I would do it so that they filled in. How do you figure that out? Just like we did on the border for the gilded Christmas tree skirt. Draw it out on paper. Once you think you got the right size on paper, use scrap fabric and then see if it fits. If it fits, you're great. I might even not do scrap fabric. I might use the real fabric and be sure I cut it big enough so that I can just trim it down. And that would work well too. I think this is a great pattern. I think it'll turn out lovely, but I'm not going to make it the way it is. Put me in the category of life is too short to work on projects you don't want to do. This is our hobby. This is supposed to be fun. If you're not having fun, put that project down and move to something that is fun. Life is just too short. So if you found value in this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And we always value all your comments. Please comment. Until next time, happy sewing.